Hello and welcome to another episode of The Quiet Dream as we continue the excitement and build up towards the Milano Cortina Olympic Winter Games in 2026. And we're looking at curling today, which is a sport very close to my heart, a brilliant sport, wonderful social activity too, and a great community right around the world. The curling competition begins proceedings for Milano Cortina as far as competition goes. And on Wednesday, the 4th of February, there is an evening session of mixed doubles, and that will start the official competition ahead of also the opening ceremony on the Friday. There is men's skiing training, alpine skiing training, and some luge official training as well on those Wednesdays, but the mixed doubles curling competition starts on Wednesday, the 4th in earnest. So we can't wait for that, the first official competition. Unfortunately, from an Australian perspective, the world number one mixed doubles pairing of Tahli, Gill and Dean Hewitt have missed out on qualifying for the Milano Cortina Olympic Winter Games in 2026. They missed out on the qualification automatically of being in the top 8 ranked teams as far as a combination of the World Curling Championships points for 2024 and 2025 went. They then went into a repechage system and they lost by one shot to the Czech Republic and then lost in the final playoff against Republic of Korea to miss out on a spot at the Olympic Winter Games. And that comes after they became the first Australian curling team to compete at a Games, and that was in Beijing in 2022. They finished 10th then, and they continue their rise and ascent to the top of curling's stage. Unfortunately, they missed out on a berth at Milano Cortina, and mostly on the back of a disappointing result at the 2024 Worlds. They finished 3rd in 2025 and again continued to break new ground for Australian curlers, but sadly for them, they miss out at Milano Cortina. So they've got plenty of time to continue to establish themselves. Dean is 31 years of age and Tahli 26, so a lot of curling ahead of them, and a sport that lends itself to continued wisdom and experience at high-level events. So we look forward to seeing their journey, and we can't wait to see, hopefully, their participation at the Olympic Winter Games in 2030. But we will dive deep into the curling program at Milano Cortina, and our guest today is a curling commentator, Cullen. He's based in Calgary in Canada and follows the world curling scene. He is an expert on all things curling, not just at the top of the game, but down to the grassroots and the culture and atmosphere of curling. We can't wait to chat with John. He is an entertaining character himself, and we'll look forward to asking him about what makes curling just such a fabulous part of the sporting landscape around the world. For Milano Cortina, the curling events are happening in Cortina d'Ampezzo at the Cortina Curling Olympic Stadium. It was a venue at the 1956 Olympic Winter Games. It hosted the opening ceremony and also the figure skating, and it has been refurbished for the Milano Cortina Games, and it is an incredible venue, a strikingly beautiful setting, and the curling centre is in the heart of the Dolomites, right down a valley. And have a look at just how brilliant that's going to be from a television perspective, and for the athletes to arrive at that facility every day to practice ahead of the games and then to compete as well. It will be a brilliant scene and setting for the curling competition, which is one of those iconic events at an Olympic Winter Games. It's been dominated by Canada at the Olympic Winter Games. The first tournament was in 1924, and then after Lake Placid in 1932, the curling competition took a hiatus until it returned as an exhibition sport or a demonstration sport at Calgary in 1988. It was also an exhibition sport in 1992 at Albertville, which is when Dean Hewitt's father, Steve, actually competed for Australia at those games, but it wasn't an official competition, which then led Dean to continue the family's legacy and become part of the first official Australian curling team at an Olympic Winter Games at Beijing 2022. But curling returned officially to the Olympic Games program in 1998 in Nagano, and Canada has continued its impressive form. It's a country or National Olympic Committee that hasn't missed winning a medal at any curling competition at an Olympic Winter Games. They have 12. 6 of those are gold for Canada. So certainly a dominant performance from Canada at the Games, but the challenge has continued to come. Sweden has been great in recent years, Great Britain as well on the women's side, and Italy won the Olympic Winter Games mixed doubles curling competition at Beijing 2022. So there will be a very strong local flavour at the curling competition in Milano Cortina. So Canada is again expected to be strong. Great Britain, Sweden, Norway, Switzerland, and those traditional curling powerhouses will be strong. And the USA as well, after a big performance in Pyeongchang, the viral moments of Matt Hamilton and that delightful moustache of his in Pyeongchang. But the USA is starting to re-establish themselves in and amongst the major hitters of curling. But I encourage anyone, anywhere in the world, if you see a curling rink or the chance to get out on the ice and understand a little bit more about the sport, to do so. It is a welcoming community. And I think in most places, if you get in touch with the local curling figureheads or the people controlling the sheet of ice or the rink, and let them know you're interested in finding out a little bit more about curling, they will accommodate you wherever they can. And a lot of rinks will have a Learn to Curl program. The Ice House in Melbourne used to have a curling, burger and beer evening on a Monday, which I used to travel every now and then with some friends from Perth across just for that. I think it was about $20 value, pure value, at the Stephen Bradbury rink at the Ice House and Olympic Winter Institute of Australia in Melbourne. And they still hold drop-in curling evenings and Learn to Curl events at that sheet in Melbourne. Also in Brisbane, if you're in Queensland or travelling through and you want to experience what curling is, please get in touch with that local curling community, because it is growing and it's incredibly strong and warm and welcoming, and a great exponent for curling, and one of those great situations for Australian sport too. Very welcoming and the chance to experience something that is brilliant. But it's all about atmosphere curling. It's a chance to soak in and take a deep breath when you're watching the curling at the Olympic Winter Games, and make sure you do, because it will captivate you for sure. And if you're not sure what's happening, just give it a moment, because the characters are there, the commentary will be insightful, and the effects marks really pick up what is a brilliant sport and a historical sport. 1716, the first curling club in Scotland was established, and it's just grown around the world since then. And just the incredible scenarios of curling that is really specific. The sights and sounds, the yelling of hard, hurry, hard, and the sweeping of the ice to have the stones aquaplane and slide, and to melt the ice so that the stones do go where the teams hopefully want them to go. But great teamwork, great camaraderie, and those curling stones weighing, I think it's 20 kilos, and the stone coming from a quarry at an island just off Scotland. So rich in history, rich in atmosphere and culture. And the curling competitions, mixed doubles, 10 teams, men's and women's fours, the traditional fixture. Mixed doubles is one male, one female player. And the men's and women's competitions are four-player teams. The skip, the lead, and then the two other members of the team as well, and plenty of strategy and high pressure moments in the curling competition at Milano Cortina. So the first medals are on the 10th of February, the mixed doubles, and the men's gold medal will be the second last day, and the women's gold medal will be on the final morning of the games, part of that last day hurrah as such, with some of the key and blue ribbon events being awarded. So we look forward to that as we do the start of the curling competition at Milano Cortina. The first official events of Milano Cortina, as far as competition goes, will be curling, and the mixed double starts on Wednesday, the 4th of February. And the man joining us is a former competitive curler, a comedian, a writer, a commentator, and also central to one of the big scandals of curling as well. John Cullen joins us from Calgary. John, hello, how are you?
Hey, Will, I'm great. Thanks so much for having me all the way in Sydney. This is very exciting.
It's exciting for me and us as well because curling's one of those great Olympic events that Australians either discover or rediscover or can get back across. And from a Canadian perspective, curling's enormous. And at the Olympic Games, Canada's never not won an Olympic medal. They've got 12 medals and 6 of those gold across the curling competitions at the Olympic Winter Games. But for you, how excited are you about the curling competition at Milano Cortina?
I mean, very, of course. Yeah. I mean, curling's kind of my whole life. And this is the first Olympics I'm officially covering as well. I'm going to be working for CBC during the Olympics talking about curling. And so, yeah, I mean, of course, it's the sort of marquee event on the curling calendar, especially for Canada. We have a system in curling where we let the curlers pick their own teams. There's no selection committee. There's no coach or GM that kind of puts the teams together. The players themselves make the teams. And so pretty much right when the last Olympics ends, the Canadian teams start the shuffle and they try to figure out what the right mix is for the next Olympics in 4 years' time. So for us, it's really like a 4-year process and something that we really look forward to. And now, as we record this, we're less than 50 days out. It's as exciting as it gets for sure.
That's quite unique and rare from an Olympics perspective that the athletes are allowed to sort of not negotiate, but work that out themselves, as you say. So the mixed doubles team of Jocelyn, Peterman and Brett Gallant, a married couple, were the first official team members announced for Canada's Milano Cortina team. They qualified through the mixed doubles, which we'll get to a little bit from an Australian perspective shortly. But how does that work from an athlete's perspective? Is it fairly clear cut that the teams set themselves and whoever makes it, or is it up to the skips? How does that work?
Yeah, it's usually the skip kind of has a lot of the say because they're the best player. You know, there's only, I think a lot of Canadian curlers would tell you on both the men's and women's side, there's only a handful of skips that would be good enough to compete at the Olympic level. So everybody who doesn't skip wants to get on one of those teams with a skip that does potentially have a chance to, push them over the line. And so, yeah, I think a lot of it just comes from that. And of course, you'll have people who are friends and they always curl together. Like Canada's representative this year is Brad Jacobs in the 4-person men's game. His third, Mark Kennedy, and his lead, Ben Hebert, have played together. I think this is like their 16th or 17th season together. They had a break in the middle. Like that's not consecutive years, but they've played together for a very, very long time. And so you do end up with these kind of like little groupings underneath the skip that, maybe they want to stay together or whatever. But yeah, generally the skip is going to have a huge say. And then for mixed doubles, a lot of times it is couples. To be honest, you talked about Jocelyn and Brett. They're a married couple, and Canada has quite a few good married couples, or at least couples like Kadriana and Colton Lott. They've won the last 2 Canadian championships. They didn't win the trials, so the Olympic trials are separate from the Canadian championships, and we can get to that in a minute or never, doesn't matter, but it's pretty self-explanatory. It's a separate thing to go to the Olympics, but they've won the last 2 Canadian championships. Marley Powers and Luke Saunders are one of the top teams. They're a couple. And so obviously there are some who are not couples, and it's usually top competitive curlers who have an interest in mixed doubles. They kind of get together. But yeah, that's how it kind of sometimes works in mixed doubles, is it's just, the person I share my life with, I also get out on the rink with.
Maybe we stay with the mixed doubles because Australia's team of Den Hewitt and Tahli Gill, they're the world number ones. They've had an incredible rise from a curling perspective and an Australian perspective too. For an Australian team to be ranked number 1 in the world in curling is, I think, phenomenal. They've missed out though. The way the quotas worked is it was 8 automatically qualified teams and combined points from the 24 and 25 World Curling Championships. That pairing had a disappointing 2024 tournament and as a result ended up in a repechage qualification tournament as such. They missed out initially against Czech Republic and then lost the final match against Republic of Korea. So they miss out. But how are they received on the world circuit? And from a curling perspective, from an Australian perspective, really disappointing for them not to be there. But how does that world number 1 team end up missing out?
I mean, anything can happen in curling, really. I think the mixed doubles rankings are a little bit skewed
Hmm.
because, like, in terms of it, to answer your question, how does it happen? It's not to say they're not a great mixed doubles team, because they absolutely are. But in the more sort of curling mad countries, as it were, the ones that are deeper, the mixed doubles pairs are also on four-person teams. They don't play mixed doubles as much. So like
Hmm.
Jocelyn and Brett are a great example of that. You know, Brett is going to the Olympics on his four-person team as well. He's on Team Brad Jacobs. Jocelyn Peterman is also on a high-profile four-person women's team that just missed the playoffs at the Olympic trials. So for them, they are one of the best mixed doubles teams in the world, but they only play 2 or 3 mixed doubles events a year
Hmm.
because they're so tied in with their four-person team. And so for Dean and Tahli, like, they only play mixed doubles. They're not on four-person teams. So, you know, if Jocelyn and Brett are playing 3 events a year, Dean and Tahli might be playing 7 or 8. So it's a lot easier to become the world number one. I always use the comparison of basketball, right? Like, if you held a, you know, like last Olympics had the 3-on-3 basketball tournament.
Hmm.
And does anyone think that, you know, whoever plays for the US, that like if LeBron, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry decided to put a team in the 3-on-3 basketball tournament, that they wouldn't be the best team? I mean, I think they would, but they're already on NBA teams, so maybe they wouldn't be as high in the 3-on-3 basketball rankings. And that's kind of how it works for the mixed doubles as well. So I do think they're a very good team. I think they're definitely a top 10 team. But I do think the world number one ranking is maybe like a little bit inflated. And yeah, again, with the mixed doubles, it's just very competitive. Also, it's a game where, yeah, there's huge momentum swings. As we saw, they were the favorite going into that repechage event, the OQE. Lost. They had 2 chances at getting through, as you mentioned, lost both of them. And so it's one of those things where, yes, it was a surprise. They were probably the favorite going into the OQE, but it's not like, oh my God, what the hell happened? You know, it's very reasonable that they missed out. That, you know, they're in the mix, but there's lots of teams in the mix, and it's very competitive.
Hmm. Beautifully articulated. I think if ever Australia is at the centre of an oh my god curling story, that's something we should all be exceptionally proud of. But they're still young and finding their way through, and given the curling scene in Australia, it's a huge result. On the mixed doubles, Estonia, they're the world number 2 ranked side. I think similarly from a rankings perspective, they earn the points because that's what they're focusing on, and both players have to curl every end, every competition to earn the points. So is there much buzz around the Estonian team? It's the first time Estonia will have competed in curling at an Olympic Winter Games, and they're there as a part of that mixed doubles competition.
Yeah, they're very good. Harri and Marie are, yeah, they're excellent players. They've had stretches as the world number one, very, very solid team. And I think it's similar to Dean and Tahli. What you see with Estonia and other countries as well is mixed doubles has sort of allowed them a platform. Like, it's allowed these smaller countries, these lesser curling countries, to have success on the world stage, because you only need to financially support 2 people, and you only need to have
Mhm.
2 people that are willing to sacrifice so much. Like, you know, for Dean and Tahli, for Marie and Harri, they don't live close to Canada. 90% of the events are in Canada, so you're spending chunks of your year living in Canada or traveling around Canada, playing in these big mixed doubles tournaments to get your ranking points and to get to the world championships. And so, yeah, it's a huge time commitment. And I think for players like Marie and Harri, there are other Estonian players. Like, Marie has also represented Estonia at the 4-person level as well. But it's harder to find 4 people who are willing to say, yeah, I'm going to give up my whole life for this thing that's not really going to make me a lot of money. I got to travel to Canada, spend a bunch of time there in a country I don't live in. So yeah, I think it's that's what the mixed doubles game has brought, is it's allowed these countries and these players who are really willing to sacrifice to find, all you got to do is find one other player that's willing to sacrifice, and you go to your sport federation, you say, hey, this is half the cost of a 4-person team, so what are you going to do for us? And yeah, it's worked out really well. I think it's brought a lot more countries to the dance as far as getting a curling program going. And I think in some cases mixed doubles success is sparking four-player success as well. Like, it's showing the countries that curling is a sport that they could have success in. And so, yeah, adding mixed doubles to the Olympic calendar, which started in 2018, has been really huge for the sport in general.
We love seeing administrations hit the right marks with these sorts of things, don't we?
Yeah, 100%. And we make it easier on them. We're like, hey, we'll cut your expenses in half. What sport federation doesn't love to hear that?
Yeah. So mixed doubles starts things off on the 4th, and then the medals, I think they're on the 10th of February, the first medals for curling, and then the men's and the women's 4-person events. As you say, the mixed doubles started in 2018, and Tahli and Dean were there in 2022, finished 10th from an Australian perspective. They won't be there, but over on the men's and women's sides, Canada again are expected to be strong. Rachel Homan, the skipper for the women's, they seem to be the best team in the world, or the team to beat. Is that how the women's side stacks up, that Canada's the team to beat, and then the usual favourites like Switzerland and Sweden and Great Britain as well are the main challengers?
Yes, 100%. This is, I think we went through a long stretch where if you were just wearing the Canada jacket, you were the favorite. And that goes back to before the Olympics as well, at World Championships. Curling came into the Olympics in 98. And yeah, before that, it didn't really matter who won Canada. It was sort of, you have the Canadian Maple Leaf on, you're expected to win, or at the very least to medal. That's kind of gone away a little bit. Like, I do think, from an Australian perspective, or people who are listening to this that don't know a lot about curling, probably if you ask them who's really good at curling, the first country they would say is Canada, which is true. We are still good, and we are still, the expectations are high, but we like to say the world has caught up. Like, a lot of countries have very, very good teams. However, Rachel Homan has put together 2.5 years of the most dominant curling we've ever seen. So this team, her team, as I said, Canadian teams put together teams for the quad. So their first year of the quad, they had some success. Like, they had a new lineup. They had some success, but not a ton. They didn't win the Canadian National Championships. They played well on tour, but they didn't have like a big marquee win. And then starting in that second season up until now, so about 2.5 years ago, they've been almost unbeatable. They just came off, actually. We had a Grand Slam a week ago, and that was the first time they had lost 2 games in a row in 2.5 years. So they lost the last game of the round robin, and then they lost in the quarterfinal. They had a winning streak against Canadian teams. And I mean, we think of Canada as a deep curling power of over a year. They went over a year without losing to a Canadian team in any event. So yeah, they've been incredible. Their winning percentage is around 90 for the last 2.5 years, which we usually say, like, a really, really good elite curling team will usually have a winning percentage of around 80%. And they're a full 10 points higher than that. They've won the last 2 world championships. They've won the last 2 Canadian national championships undefeated. They made the finals in 9 slams in a row up until this one or 8 slams in a row. This was the 9th, and they didn't make the finals in this one. But they've been incredible. They're ahead above the rest of the field. As you said, doesn't mean there won't be challengers there. And I think what a lot of the teams are thinking is, maybe the Olympics are a bit of a bugaboo for Rachel. I think most people think of her as the greatest women's curler of all time, or certainly in that conversation. But she's been to 2 Olympics and has 0 medals. She went to the 4-person games in 2018, was the favorite there, didn't even make the playoffs. Then she went for mixed doubles in 2022, missed the playoffs there as well. So I think if you're the other teams, you're just hoping, well, she gets to the Olympics and the pressure starts to mount, and maybe she doesn't have her best game there. But yeah, she's the overwhelming favorite on the women's side for sure.
How much attention is there on her from a home support perspective in Canada, or expectation perspective?
A lot, okay, for sure. Yeah, not just in the curling community, because obviously curlers have watched her dominance over the last few years, and they will love that. But I think also, like, what a lot of people forget is there just aren't that many medals in the Winter Olympics. It's not like the Summer Olympics where, it feels like there's every possible distance and stroke and combination of swimming. There's like 50 gold medals available in swimming alone or whatever it is. And in the Winter Olympics, like there just aren't that many gold medals. Like there just aren't. So when you have a gold medal favorite in Canada, and we are a very strong Winter Olympics country, you know, we're usually in the top 5 on the medal table. We have the record for the most golds ever, which happened on home soil back in 2010. So yeah, like it's going to be, she'll have the pressure from the curling world, but I think as we get closer to the Olympics, there's also going to be those sort of big countrywide media features that are like, this is one of our gold medal favorites. This is one of our hopes, you know? And so, yeah, I think there's always a lot of pressure that comes along with that. And she's spoken openly about that, you know, in 2022, she really felt the pressure of representing Canada. And yeah, I think it has been, it's a lot for sure. We're lucky. She's managed it a bunch of times before. As I said, 2 Olympics, she's been to 4 world championships. So she's felt the pressure, but yeah, this is another level, I think, for sure, especially with the added pressure of everyone's telling you you're the greatest team of all time. How do you cap off being the greatest team of all time? Well, you win an Olympic gold medal. So
yeah, it's exciting. Well, certainly one to keep an eye on for everybody, even just the general sports fans. It's not always the fairy tale, but when it does translate like that, it's a truly special situation. So we'll look forward to that. Speaking of Rachel Homan as one of the best curlers of all time, we have to acknowledge Sweden's men's team then, if we're looking at the 4-man, because Sweden's skip has achieved everything at World Championships and Olympics level. Are they the team to beat on the men's?
I don't think people would say they're the team to beat on the men's side. I mean, yes, they do have an incredible resume. So for those of you who don't know, it's a skip by the name of Niklas Edin. He's won 8 European championships, 7 world championships. He has an Olympic medal of every color. He's the defending gold medalist from 2022. And this quad, he hasn't been as good. He hasn't been as sharp this quad, particularly on tour. He has won a world championship in this quad, and he just won the European championship in Lohja, Finland, like a month ago. And so I think that's got people thinking like, okay, maybe he is ramping up again for the Olympics. And he's definitely going to be one of the favorites. The men's field is a little more interesting than the women's. And again, the women's field is interesting. As you said, there's 4 or 5 teams that could win, but it is sort of that Rachel Homan is sort of the favorite with a bullet kind of thing. On the men's side, I would say Bruce Mowat of Scotland, or representing Great Britain at the Olympics, is definitely the favorite, but I think there's like a really strong group of teams underneath that you would really look at and say, if they won, there'd be no surprise. So Niklas Edin is one of those, but again, he's just outside the top 10 in the world rankings. It hasn't been his best last couple of years. Then you've got Yannick Schwaller from Switzerland. They just broke through and won their first Grand Slam like a week ago, so that was huge for them. Brad Jacobs from Canada. He's the world number 3, very much a solid team, had a great run at the Worlds last year, won a bronze there. So yeah, and then there's even some kind of dark horses underneath them. I really like the young U.S. team. I think they're very strong. China has some strength too. And so, yeah, it's just there's a lot of Norway's good too. Like the men's to me is a little bit more wide open. Like I think if you had to predict the playoffs on both sides, I think the women's playoffs are a little bit easier to predict than the men's. I think there's sort of some clear strata, whereas the men, it's anyone's game. But yeah, I don't think anyone would have Niklas pegged as the favorite, but he's certainly in the mix for sure.
Well, what makes a good skip? Because it's a central position, naturally. I think that's fairly clear that the skipper leads the charge, but in curling even more so. What sets a good skip apart?
I think it's leadership. I mean, that's easy to say, obviously, but curling is such a small team game. You know, there's 4 players on the team. So if you think of team captains in other sports, you know, soccer, rugby, cricket, for Australians, you know, you're dealing with larger teams. So you could be a great captain and kind of like hate a couple guys on your team, or like not really lead them, or, you know, whatever. And you kind of say, well, yeah, we're a rugby team of 15 guys. I don't really like that guy or that guy, but whatever. I'm the captain. Most of the guys like me. It's fine.
Mhm.
Curling, that's not really an option. You can't just have one or two guys not like you on a 4-person team. It's very difficult. So I think the leadership aspect of it is super important. And then I think it's just dealing with pressure. I mean, for those who are new to curling, skip throws the last 2 shots of every end, and then obviously the scoring is done once the 2 skips are done throwing. And so, yeah, you have to have that ability, like to make a big shot when the game is on the line, and really your ability to make that shot when you need it is huge. We say in curling, it's a cliche, but we say you got to make the right shots at the right times. You can actually out curl your opponent, play better than your opponent, but if you miss a big shot at the wrong time, you could give up 4 or 5, and in a game like curling, that's you lose. So yeah, so I think it's leadership. I think it's being able to deal with the pressure, and then it's also just the mental side of it. Curling's a game of strategy, so you have to balance. I'm calling the game. I'm doing all the strategy for my team, and then I also have to turn around and go throw those big final stones. It's yeah, it's a lot. I wouldn't want to do it. I played lead my whole career. I was like, I'll leave that to you guys. I'm out.
I love it. Just hearing you talk about it really fires me up. I'm looking forward to the venue in Cortina d'Ampezzo is beautiful for curling. It's in the heart of the Dolomites. It was the venue for the 1956 opening ceremony in figure skating. It's been refurbished. Italy is well represented in curling too. Their mixed doubles team is a very good one. They would have qualified in their own right in the top 8 ranked teams as far as the ranking system was set up for curling. They qualified by being the host nation. But what's expected? Atmosphere, I imagine, is going to be fabulous again, given that it's a winter sports nation, the Italians, and that Cortina d'Ampezzo environment will be spectacular. What's expected of the atmosphere at the curling for Milano Cortina?
Yeah, I think it's going to be huge. I think it does kind of remind me a little bit of the Olympics in Vancouver, because I lived there. So I lived in Vancouver for 25 years, and I was living in Vancouver in 2010. And you kind of had these like 2 pockets, right? Like you have Vancouver, and there was a bunch of events in Vancouver, and then there was a bunch of events in Whistler. And as an Australian, I assume you're very familiar with Whistler. I think your country is basically taking it over at this point. But Whistler it's about 2 hours from Vancouver. And so there was sort of this like, Whistler had its own thing and Vancouver had its own thing. And you kind of, there was almost like 2 pockets of audiences, whether you wanted to go watch the skiing and the sliding events, or whether you wanted to be down in Vancouver seeing the hockey, the speed skating, whatever. And that's going to be magnified even more in Italy, because Cortina's, I believe, almost 4 hours from Milan. And especially with Olympic traffic and everything, like it's really going to kind of be its own thing, where people who live in Cortina or live in that area, I think, are really going to own, like, these are our events, because there's not a ton of stuff going on there. There's skiing there, and there's curling there, and and the sliding events, I think, and like that's kind of it. So yeah, I think it's going to be huge. I think that mixed doubles team is going to feel some pressure, definitely. Amos, Mosaner, and Stefania Constantini, they're the defending gold medalists. They're also the defending world champions. And again, you want to talk about a team, like, they really don't play that much mixed doubles. Like, they've been concentrating on their 4-person teams. And so, yeah, the expectations for them are high. Italy doesn't win a ton of gold medals. They have some good athletes, but it's not like Canada or the US or, other huge superpowers in Winter Olympics. They're in that mix, but they're not necessarily like Amos and Stefania are definitely one of their gold medal hopes. And so I think there's going to be a lot of pressure that comes with that. I think the women's team is going to struggle. They've had a really tough last couple of years. They've fallen out of the top 20 in the world rankings, and they just don't look cohesive to me. They were in the last Grand Slam, which I was commentating, and yeah, it hasn't really been their best year. I mean, obviously anyone can surprise in any given event. It's, again, if they do well, it's not crazy. They're a good team, but going into the event, don't love the way they're looking. The men, though, they're another one that's in that mix. I neglected to mention them earlier, but yeah, they're definitely in that mix with those top teams. They can beat any team on any given day. They're very strong and they're playing well. Like last year, they kind of fell off a little bit after having a great year in 2023. They won 3 slams in 2023. Then they kind of fell off a bit last year, and now this year they've been very good again. They haven't won a slam, but they've made it deep in a couple. They won a tour event that had a lot of good teams in it. So yeah, they'll be in that mix. Like I think the men will have a very good chance to medal. And then, yeah, the mixed doubles team, I would say, is the favorite going into the event, just based on how well they've done at the Olympics and the fact they're the defending world champions. That mixed doubles tournament is going to be a gauntlet, but they're very, very good. And I would say they're a small, if they're a favorite, they're a small favorite, but I really like their chances going in for sure.
Generally from this curling tournament, and we're starting to see players locked in, teams locked in, the lay of the land sort of unfold. But there are always incredible characters at the curling tournaments at the Olympic Games, from Norway and their sort of colourful trousers to Matt Hamilton and his antics in Pyeongchang, and then obviously famous names like Ross Howard from Canada. Who are some of the? Can you give us some names that we can keep an eye on in Milano Cortina? Those people who undoubtedly are going to go a little bit viral on social media for their outfit or their get up or how they're cheering a stone or sort of yelling at their sweepers. Like what can we expect? Because it is a sport every 4 years that transcends the general sports consciousness and really fires people up.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some good characters. I mean, I would honestly say Canada's skip, Brad Jacobs, is he's a real character, not afraid to, because all the curlers are mic'd up, right? So he's not afraid to say what he's thinking into the microphone. You almost don't need to commentate when you're calling his games because he's very honest, says a lot of really funny things out there. He's had a few viral moments this year just for stuff that he says into the microphone. He was playing Brad Gushue, he went for Canada in 2022, sort of one of our sporting legends. We had a slam in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, which is Brad Gushue's home last year. Crowd was booing Brad Jacobs and he was encouraging them. He was, twirling his finger and he's like, yeah, let's go. Let me hear it, And so, yeah, he's a real character. I think people are going to love him for sure. I also think the Norwegian guys on the men's side, they don't wear the pants. That was a Thomas Ulsrud thing. And that's kind of been left as that team's thing. But yeah, they're just sort of like 4 burly guys from Trondheim, Norway, which is a smaller town in the north of Norway. And they're super funny, really good sense of humor, don't take themselves too seriously. Like they're the team that if anyone's going to be making like stupid TikToks in the Olympic Village, it's going to be them. They do some really, really funny stuff on social media. So that's on the men's side. I would pay attention to them. I like them a lot. And I would also say Danny Casper from the US, the skip there, another very funny guy, likes to keep it loose. And again, trying to get American curling on the map. I think he'll mix it up a little bit for sure. And then on the women's side, it's maybe a little bit more serious, a little more stoic. But I will say one of these sort of, and it's not for maybe like viral moments, but one of the more beloved characters in women's curling is Alina Petz. So she throws fourth rocks for Switzerland for Silvana Tirinzoni. And everyone remarks on just how cool she is. Like her demeanor, her style. She's just like, she's very fun loving, very easygoing. And yeah, she's made a lot of fans in Canada and outside of Switzerland just for her just general vibe. People really like her. And so, yeah, maybe not the type of viral stuff you'd maybe be expecting from some of the men, but I would say character wise on the women's side, her and her team, Team Tirinzoni, Switzerland, they're going to be ones to watch for sure. And I think they have a good chance of winning. So you'll see a lot of them over the course of the Olympics. Definitely.
Love all of that. And it's the fabric of curling, isn't it? It's considered a slower game in terms of some of the other Winter Olympic sports and how speed is such a factor. So there's a lot more time to take it in. But curling's one of those fabulous sports that really breathes the culture of a town and an environment that it's been competed in as well. The crowd gets close, the athletes move around. From your perspective, traveling around, commentating curling, covering curling, watching it grow even more, Why do you love curling?
Oh, I mean, how long do you have? I love it because it's slow, Will. I mean, you said it right there. I love just a nice, slow sport. No, I just, I mean, I'm being a little bit facetious, but that is kind of true. Like I always say, like you cannot beat the pressure and the tension of a big curling shot. And there are sort of similar moments. I would say maybe golf is like is the biggest one, where it's like this golfer's got to make this putt to win the championship. And so there's this sort of similar tension of, okay, he's lining up the putt. Okay, he's stepping up to the putt. Okay, he's good. It's not the same as all these, soccer, rugby, cricket, hockey for us, whatever, where it's everything's bang, bang, bang. It's just, you're just relying on muscle memory. Yeah, there's lots of pressure, but it's not the same. Golf is maybe the closest one, but it's like, imagine that putt scenario, but it's like 3 times as long. Like, it's so long. Like, especially if it's like a big shot, you take a lot of time with the strategy. So that gives you some time to talk with your friend. What are they going to do? Where are they going to put the broom? How are they going to set this up? Whatever. So you have that. Then you have them sliding all the way down to the other ice to get into the hack. Then you have their pre-shot routine in the hack. And then, like, if a golfer has to make a putt for the win, how long is it before the ball leaves the putter to either gets in the hole or misses? Like 2 seconds, maybe 3 seconds, depending on how long the putt is. Curling shots, like 15 seconds, 18 seconds, 20. So you have this, like, it's coming down the ice. It's like, oh my God, are they going to do it? Like, it's just the buildup and the release of the tension is unlike any other sport. Like, there's nothing like it as far as a static moment of pressure. I don't think exists in any other sport, which I think is very fascinating. And then, I think, I'm glad you asked me about the characters in the sport, because like you said, I think because of the speed of the game, you get a chance to know the curlers. Like, there's almost like because they're mic'd up also, like you almost develop this like parasocial relationship with them. It's almost like you're listening to them record a podcast while they're playing, because you hear everything they say to their team, maybe to their opposition. Like, you get a really good sense of who these people are as people. And I think that's one of the really cool parts. If you only watch curling during the Olympics, it goes for 2 weeks. And I think by the end of the 2 weeks, you would have a sense of who are your guys, who do you like, because you get to hear so much of what they're doing and what they're saying out on the ice. Like, I think people really get connected to curlers in a way that they don't other athletes. And so I think those two things, there's obviously lots of other reasons, but for me, those are the two things that kind of set curling apart as an Olympic sport to get invested in. That it's different from any other sport, I think, in both of those respects.
What a fabulous environment and sport and cultural phenomenon curling is, and certainly from a Canadian perspective, there are sheets of ice in so many of the towns and towns that people wouldn't be familiar with too, where the curling rink becomes a central focal point, even socially and culturally as well. But I'm keen to just quickly touch a little bit more on your story as well, because you're an accomplished comedian, used to curl at quite a high level. You're now covering the game as a profession. Is that something you can now do full time, cover curling? You've been able to combine all of your various traits at such a high level that you can follow curling almost completely?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I have
Awesome.
other stuff. I still do stand up, and I have some, I do a couple podcasts that make me some money, a couple comedy podcasts. But yeah, curling is kind of my main thing. I was a high school teacher, so that was my job. Like, while I was competing, I was a substitute teacher, because obviously being a substitute affords you the time off that you need to play. So I did that for 13 years while I was also doing comedy. And I kind of, I've just always been a guy. I've had my fingers in a lot of pies. I've always just been able to kind of, amalgamate one job out of like 7 jobs, or one job salary, but doing 7 jobs or whatever. But yeah, I've been really lucky the last couple of years working with the Grand Slam of curling. that has really been what's allowed me to focus on curling mostly full time now. Yeah, I don't do a ton of stand up anymore. I do some, but I'm not out every night at the open mics and grinding and stuff like that. So yeah, it's gotten to a point now where curling is pretty much it, which is very exciting, and the slams continue to grow. Like, they got bought a couple of years ago by a consortium called the Curling Group, and they've been really kind of shepherding the sport into a new era. We're launching our first professional league this year called the Rock League coming up, which is very exciting. A lot of the teams you're going to see in the Olympics, you'll also see, or a lot of the curlers you'll also see in that. So super excited for that. And yeah, I think just the way that they're thinking about expanding the game and how they want the game covered, at least fingers crossed, I think is gonna keep me able to do this for quite a while longer. And I'm very excited about that.
Well, congrats on that, because I think that's awesome, and no doubt they're extremely lucky to have you. And fingers crossed the sport continues to grow. A good friend of mine is part of a team called the Curlews up in Brisbane, a team of dads.
Yes,
and,
yes, they
Andrew
follow me on
Swain.
Instagram. They've hit me up a couple times.
Yeah, so they're that classic story of people who are just keen to spend the time on the ice, and it's very difficult, obviously, in Australia with access to facilities and that sort of thing. So hopefully the sport continues to grow around the world. But from a podcast perspective, also published author, Curling Rocks for everybody at all good bookstores and online, naturally. But from a podcast perspective, you had this, was it CBS series? CBC,
yeah.
Broomgate and the Rumble at High Park. For everyone listening and watching, can you tell us a little bit about this and how you were one of the protagonists for one of curling's great yarns and it almost coming to fisticuffs one evening?
Yeah, sure. So we kind of 10 years ago, there was this scandal in curling called Broomgate, very fitting. And as you might imagine, it was about the brooms. And long story short is essentially this new broom manufacturer came on the scene and started making brooms. And there just really weren't any rules about the equipment. Like there were, sort of vague rules about technique, but there really wasn't rules about what you could use. It was sort of like, and it just because it was never a problem. We never anticipated where things would go, and so the rules were just kind of, there was sort of one rule governing broom equipment, and it was just you can't use anything that knowingly damages the ice. So if you couldn't take 80 grit sandpaper out there and use that, because you would know that that's probably not going to be very good on the ice. But this new broom company comes into play. They make this new broom. It turns out it's the best curling broom we've ever seen. And then that sparks a ton of controversy because there's really no rules that say you can't use it. It's not visibly damaging the ice. So then you have to start doing research about, well, is it damaging the ice at a microscopic level? Like, we don't know. So obviously,
just quickly for people who aren't aware, that the broom is to almost melt the ice to create an aquaplane for the stone to move in a certain direction. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Yeah, exactly. So that's what the brooms are doing. And we always thought the brooms were just to make the rocks go straighter and faster. And then it turned out with these brooms, we could also make them curl, and we could make them slow down if we wanted. And so that was so it caused this whole firestorm. And of course, all the governing bodies took them a long time to catch up, because they're like, well, we can't just ban brooms. Like, we don't have rules for that. So we have to do research and figure out what this is going to look like. And so we just had a full season of curlers arguing with each other about what you should use, what you shouldn't use, what's good sportsmanship to use, what's not. And then, as you alluded to, it kind of comes to a head at an event in Toronto at a club called the High Park Curling Club, where the curlers almost get in a fist fight. They retire down to the locker room in the curling club to try and sort it all out. And it changed the game forever, I think, for the positive. But in the moment, a lot of friendships were ruined. Like, a lot of top curlers are very close friends. It is competitive, but we also really enjoy each other's company off the ice. And the social fabric of the game has always been very important. And that got kind of ruined. And so, I lived through it. I was one of the teams that was using these super brooms without knowing how good they were. So I kind of found myself in the middle of it. And yeah, no one had really told the story. And I always thought it was one of curling's most fascinating stories. I've always thought about, how do I get people who don't know anything about curling to care about curling? And I kind of thought, well, this is one of the only interesting things that's ever happened in curling from an outsider's perspective. So I was like, why don't we make a podcast about it? And yeah, it had a lot of success. We got very lucky in terms of the team we got to work with. And yeah, we won an Ambie for Best Sports Podcast, which is kind of like the Emmys for podcasting. We were the #1 podcast in Canada for a few weeks. We were in the top 10 for several months. It's done millions of downloads, and we're working on potential TV and film projects with it. So yeah, it just ballooned into this thing. I mean, I knew it was an interesting story. I didn't think that many people would care. But yeah, it really took on a life of its own. And I've been, sort of very lucky to be the guy that got to tell that story.
Well, it comes down to how the story can be told as well. So again, congratulations on that. And anyone who wants to find that, head on out, search for Broomgate across a number of platforms, but also Curling Rocks. And if you're interested in curling or good yarns, John is certainly somebody to follow and dive deep into to his back catalogue as well of all of the things he's published and continues to do so. It's a delight to chat with you about what makes curling such a brilliant sport and spectacle at Milano Cortina. We aren't far away, and it is one of those sports which people can come back to consistently through the 2 weeks of the Olympic Games because of the round robin format. So the teams will be in pools and they will compete against each other, and then obviously it comes to a head in the knockout stages. But a final word for anyone who will be discovering or keen to rediscover curling at the Olympic Winter Games in Italy in February.
Just give it some time. You know, if you're flipping through the channels and you see that and you think to yourself, I don't like curling, I'm not interested in curling, give it some time. Give it an hour. Try to figure out what's going on. Try to see if you can grasp even the basics of the strategy. And I think you'll be surprised at how quickly an hour turns into several hours, turns into I've become obsessed with curling over the course of these Olympic Games. I think the sport has a ton to offer. The combination of strategy and physical ability is unmatched in sports, I believe. And yeah, I think it's a really special sport. Lots of special people play it. And yeah, just don't change the channel. Give it some time. And I think you'll fall in love.
That's it. Let the yelling wash over you as well, too, right? It always catches people by surprise.
Exactly. Let the screaming soothe you as you get through your Olympic TV watching journey.
Yeah, beautifully put. John, thank you so much. We appreciate your insight and expertise, and also can't wait to keep across what you're publishing and putting out there in Canada across the entire Olympic Winter Games.
Thanks for having me, Will. I really appreciate it. And yeah, go Australia, I guess.